Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided the old harvester through the corn rows. The machine groaned and wheezed, but it still worked better than anything the Galactic Council had offered him. They wanted him to use their fancy hover tech, but Marcus preferred things he could fix with his own hands. The settlement on Kepler 442b wasn't supposed to have humans. The planet was designated for the Zephyrian colonies, but bureaucratic errors and a desperate refugee situation had landed Marcus and 200 other families here 3 years ago. The Galactic Council had been reviewing the situation ever since. Marcus didn't mind the waiting. The soil was rich, the climate was manageable, and most importantly, he was left alone to farm. The Zephyrians kept to their crystal cities on the northern continent, and the humans had built their settlement in the agricultural valleys of the south. As the twin suns reached their zenith, Marcus spotted something moving at the edge of his property. He cut the engine and squinted across the golden wheat field. A group of figures was approaching through his crops, moving slowly but deliberately toward his farmhouse. His heart began to race. The figures were tall and pale, almost ghostly in the shimmering heat. Zephyrians. But these looked different from the blue-skinned ones he'd occasionally seen in the settlement's trading posts. These were pure white, like living marble. Marcus had heard whispers about the albino Zephyrians. They were outcasts, rejected by their own people for genetic variations that made them unable to process the planet's natural energy sources the way normal Zephyrians could. Most humans assumed they were raiders or criminals, driven to desperation by their exile. He climbed down from the harvester and reached for the plasma rifle mounted on the side. His hands shook as he checked the charge. Marcus had never shot anyone, human or alien, but he had a family to protect. His wife, Sarah, was in the house with their 8-year-old daughter, Emma. The albino Zephyrians were closer now, maybe 50 meters away. Marcus could make out their features. Elongated limbs, large eyes that seemed to reflect the sunlight, and skin so pale it was almost translucent. There were 5 of them, including what looked like 2 smaller figures that might be children. Marcus raised the rifle and shouted across the field, "That's far enough! This is private property!" The group stopped immediately. The tallest one, who seemed to be leading, raised both hands in what Marcus hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The alien called out in heavily accented standard galactic, "Please, human farmer, we mean no harm. We seek only water." Water. Marcus lowered the rifle slightly but kept his finger near the trigger. The settlement had 3 deep wells and a sophisticated filtration system. The humans had more clean water than they knew what to do with. But why would Zephyrians need human water? They had their own technology. "There's a stream 2 kilometers north," Marcus called back. "Follow the ridgeline." The lead Zephyrian gestured to the smaller figures beside him. "Children are weak, cannot walk far. Please, we trade for water." Marcus studied the group more carefully. The 2 small ones were indeed children, and they looked exhausted. Their pale skin seemed almost gray with fatigue, and one of the adults was supporting a child who appeared unable to stand on their own. "What do you have to trade?" Marcus asked, curiosity overcoming caution. The Zephyrian reached into a bag slung across his shoulder and pulled out something that made Marcus gasp. It was a seed pod, but not like any he'd ever seen. It glowed with a soft, blue-green light and seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. "Sustenance seeds," the alien said. "Grow in poor soil. Produce food in days, not seasons. Sacred to our people. But we offer for water and shelter." Marcus had never heard of such a thing. Earth's agricultural databases had no record of any crop that could mature in days. If this was real, it could revolutionize farming not just on Kepler 442b, but throughout human space. "Wait there," he called out, then turned and jogged toward the farmhouse. Sarah met him at the door, Emma peeking out from behind her mother's legs. "What's happening, Marcus? Who are those people?" albino Zephyrians. They want to trade for water. Marcus quickly explained the situation while keeping one eye on the aliens through the window. Seeds that grow in days? Sarah frowned. Sounds too good to be true. Maybe, but look at them, Sarah. Those children are dying of thirst. We can spare some water. Emma tugged on her father's shirt. Daddy, the white people look sad. Marcus knelt down to his daughter's level. They do, don't they? What do you think we should do? Help them, Emma said without hesitation. Mama always says we should help people who need help. Sarah sighed and looked out at the alien family. Get the emergency water containers from the storage room. But Marcus, if this goes wrong... I know. Marcus kissed his wife's forehead and ruffled Emma's hair. Stay inside until I figure out what they really want. Marcus filled 3 large containers with water from their well and loaded them onto his utility cart. He also grabbed some of Sarah's homemade bread and a few pieces of fruit. If the aliens were really desperate, they might need food too. When he returned to the field, the Zephyrians hadn't moved. They stood exactly where he'd left them, waiting patiently in the blazing heat. Marcus noticed that the adult aliens had positioned themselves to shade the children as much as possible. Here, Marcus said, pulling the cart to within a few meters of the group. Water and some food. The lead Zephyrian's large eyes widened with what Marcus interpreted as surprise. Food as well? This is most generous, human farmer. The alien children immediately moved toward the water, but the adults stopped them with gentle touches. The leader stepped forward and placed the glowing seed pod on Marcus's cart, then backed away. We honor the trade, the Zephyrian said formally. The seeds will grow in any soil. Plant at sunset, water once, harvest at next sunset. But beware, they will only grow for one who shows kindness to strangers. One of the children drank deeply from a water container, and Marcus could see color returning to the alien's pale skin. The sight triggered something in Marcus, a memory of his own childhood, being thirsty and tired during the long journey to Earth's agricultural colonies. What are your names? Marcus asked suddenly. The lead Zephyrian seemed taken aback by the question. I am called Veltar. This is my mate, Shiara, and our offspring, Kin and Lila. Were of the Crystal Valley clan. Were. Veltar's shoulders sagged slightly. We are outcast. Our genetic variance makes us unable to process the planet's energy as others do. We cannot power our technology, cannot live in the crystal cities. We are declared non-persons by the Zephyrian Council. That's horrible, Marcus said, meaning it. Where will you go? We seek the empty lands beyond the mountains. Perhaps we can build something there, away from both Zephyrian and human territories. Marcus looked at the family, parents protecting their children, facing exile and possible death, but still maintaining their dignity. It reminded him of his own grandparents' stories about leaving Earth during the population crisis. The empty lands are a wasteland, Marcus said. Nothing grows there, no water sources, you'll die. Veltar nodded slowly. Perhaps, but we must try. It is better to die free than to live as outcasts begging for scraps in Zephyrian cities. Something shifted in Marcus's chest. These weren't raiders or criminals. They were refugees, just like the humans had been 3 years ago, just like his own family. Wait, Marcus said, making a decision that would change everything. You don't have to go to the empty lands. The Zephyrian family stared at Marcus in silence. Veltar's large eyes searched the human farmer's face, looking for deception or mockery. What do you mean? Veltar asked carefully. Marcus gestured toward his farmhouse and the fields beyond. I have 300 acres here. I can't farm all of it by myself, and I could use help with the harvest season coming up. You could stay, work the land with me. Shiara stepped forward, speaking for the first time. Her voice was softer than her mate's, like wind through crystal chimes. You would trust outcasts to work beside you? "You're not outcasts to me," Marcus said firmly. "You're people who need help, and I'm someone who can provide it. Besides, if those seeds do what you say they can do, we might be able to change farming on this entire planet." The Human Settlements Governing Council would not approve. Marcus knew that, without even asking. There were strict protocols about harboring non-humans, especially Zephyrians. The peace between the two species was fragile, built on careful separation and limited interaction. But Marcus also knew something the Council didn't. Winter was coming, and it would be harsh. The climate scientists had predicted a particularly brutal season, with temperatures dropping far below anything the human colony had experienced. They would need every advantage they could get to ensure the settlement's food stores lasted until spring. "Plant the seeds first," Veltar said, indicating the glowing pod on Marcus's cart. "If they do not grow, then you will know we are worthless to you." Marcus picked up the pod, surprised by how warm it felt in his hands. It pulsed gently, like a tiny heartbeat. "How many seeds are in here?" 20, Shiara answered. "Each seed produces one plant, but each plant yields enough food for one person for 10 days. Marcus did quick math in his head. If the seeds really worked as advertised, 20 plants could feed his family for over 2 months. Or they could provide emergency rations for a significant portion of the human settlement. "What kind of food?" he asked. Kin, the older of the two Zephyrian children, spoke up in broken standard. "Tastes good, like... The child struggled with the translation, then made a gesture toward Marcus's fruit trees. "Sweet," Lila, the younger child, added helpfully. "And makes strong." Marcus made his decision. "Come on then, let's plant these seeds and see what happens." He led the Zephyrian family to a patch of ground behind his house that he'd been planning to clear for next season. The soil was poor quality, mostly clay with patches of sand. Nothing grew there except weeds. Veltar examined the ground and nodded approvingly. "This will do. The seeds prefer challenged soil. Too much richness makes them weak." As the twin suns began to set, casting long purple shadows across the farm, Marcus dug 20 small holes while the Zephyrians watched. Veltar opened the pod, revealing seeds that looked like tiny stars, each one glowing with internal light. "One per hole," Veltar instructed. "Cover lightly with soil, then water once. Do not water again until harvest." Marcus followed the instructions, placing each seed carefully and covering it with just a thin layer of earth. When he watered them, the spots where the seeds lay began to glow softly through the soil. "Now we wait," Shiara said. "Tomorrow at sunset, they will be ready." That evening, Marcus convinced Sarah to let the Zephyrian family sleep in the barn. It wasn't much, but it was shelter, and Sarah had insisted on providing blankets and hot soup for dinner. Emma was fascinated by the alien children. Despite the language barrier, she quickly found ways to communicate with Kin and Lila, teaching them human games and learning Zephyrian ones in return. By bedtime, all 3 children were giggling together like old friends. "They seem like good people," Sarah admitted as she and Marcus prepared for bed. "But Marcus, what happens when the council finds out? What happens when the Zephyrian authorities realize we're harboring outcasts?" "I don't know," Marcus said honestly. "But I know what happens if we don't help them. They die in the wasteland. And we lose the chance to learn about technology that could save lives." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Marcus was checking on the planted seeds when he heard vehicles approaching. 3 hovercraft bearing the insignia of the Human Settlement Security Force landed near his farmhouse. Captain Rodriguez stepped out of the lead vehicle, her expression grim. "Marcus, we need to talk." Sarah emerged from the house with Emma close behind, while the Zephyrian family watched nervously from the barn entrance. "Captain," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. What brings you out here?" "Reports of unauthorized alien contact," Rodriguez replied. "Someone saw Zephyrians approaching your property yesterday. I need to know what happened." Marcus glanced at his family, then at Veltar. The alien stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I am responsible," Veltar said. "We sought only water and shelter. The human farmer showed kindness when he could have shown violence." Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. "You're the albino group the Zephyrian Council reported missing. They think you've turned to raiding human settlements." "We are not raiders," Shiara said firmly. "We are exiles, seeking only to survive." "That's not my decision to make," Rodriguez said. "I have orders to escort any unauthorized aliens to the settlement for processing and eventual deportation." "Wait," Marcus said desperately. "Give me 1 day. If I can prove they're valuable to the settlement, would that change things?" Rodriguez looked skeptical. "Valuable how?" Marcus gestured toward the patch of ground where they'd planted the seeds. "They have agricultural technology that could revolutionize our food production. Seeds that grow from nothing to harvest in a single day." "That's impossible," Rodriguez said flatly. "Is it?" Marcus challenged. "How many impossible things have we seen since leaving Earth? Faster than light travel, gravity manipulation, species that breathe methane. Why not plants that grow in a day?" Rodriguez considered this, then checked her chronometer. "You have until this time tomorrow. If you can't prove these aliens are beneficial to the settlement, I have to follow orders. Understood?" "Understood." After the security team left, Marcus spent the day showing Veltar and Shiara around the farm. The aliens were amazed by human agricultural techniques, especially the mechanical harvesters and automated irrigation systems. "Your people are ingenious," Veltar observed, watching the irrigation system water the cornfields. "You make machines do the work of many hands." "We have to be efficient," Marcus explained. "We don't have the luxury of abundant population like your crystal cities." "Perhaps," Shiara said thoughtfully, "efficiency and abundance could work together." As sunset approached, Marcus gathered his family and the Zephyrians around the patch where they'd planted the seeds. The spots of light had grown brighter throughout the day, and now the soil was beginning to crack and shift. "Here they come," Kin said excitedly. Tiny green shoots pushed through the earth, growing visibly as they watched. Within minutes, the shoots had become saplings. Within an hour, they were mature plants standing 3 feet tall, heavy with fruit that glowed like soft lanterns in the gathering darkness. Emma clapped her hands in delight. "They're beautiful!" Veltar carefully harvested one of the fruits and offered it to Marcus. "The first fruit should be eaten by the one who showed kindness." Marcus bit into the fruit and his eyes widened. It tasted like the sweetest apple mixed with honey, but with an underlying richness that made him feel immediately energized and satisfied. One piece felt like it could sustain him for hours. "This is incredible," he breathed. As the family shared the miraculous harvest, Marcus began to envision possibilities that stretched far beyond his small farm. This wasn't just about helping one refugee family. This was about changing the future of human survival on Kepler 442b. Captain Rodriguez returned the next morning with the settlement's agricultural commissioner and 2 council members. Marcus had spent the entire night preparing for this moment, gathering data and planning his presentation. "Show us what you've got, Marcus," Rodriguez said, though her tone suggested she expected to be disappointed. Marcus led the group to the patch where the sustenance plants grew. In the morning light, the fruits glowed like captured sunbeams, and their sweet fragrance filled the air. The officials stood in stunned silence. "Yesterday at sunset, this was empty soil," Marcus said. "These plants grew from nothing in less than 24 hours. Each fruit contains enough nutrition to sustain an adult human for days." Commissioner Walsh, a stern woman in her 60s, knelt down to examine the plants. This violates everything we know about biology. Plants need time to develop complex nutritional structures. Unless they've been genetically engineered by a species that's been mastering biotechnology for thousands of years, Marcus countered. Veltar stepped forward. Honored humans, these plants are not engineered. They are cultivated through symbiosis with our people's life energy. But they respond to any being that shows genuine compassion. Your farmer's kindness allowed them to grow. Councilmember Thompson, a practical man who managed the settlement's food stores, asked the crucial question. How many seeds do you have? This was our last pod, Shiara admitted. But the plants produce new seeds. With proper care, you could have infinite supply. What's the catch? Rodriguez asked suspiciously. What do you want in return? Veltar and Shiara exchanged a glance. Only to stay, Veltar said simply. To work alongside humans and share what knowledge we can. We are outcasts from our own people. We have nowhere else to go. Commissioner Walsh stood up, brushing soil from her hands. Even if we accept that these plants are real, harboring Zephyrian exiles could jeopardize our diplomatic status with their government. The Galactic Council specifically stated that territorial disputes should be avoided. Marcus felt his hopes sinking. The officials were impressed by the plants, but political considerations were overriding practical ones. Emma had been quietly listening to the conversation, holding Lila's hand. Suddenly, she spoke up. What if the Zephyrians weren't the only ones who were exiles? The adults turned to look at her. What do you mean, sweetheart? Sarah asked. Well, Emma said with the straightforward logic of a child, didn't we get exiled from Earth because there wasn't enough room for everyone? And didn't we get sent here by accident because nobody wanted us either? The simple truth of her words hit everyone like a thunderbolt. The humans on Kepler 442b were refugees themselves, cast out from an overcrowded homeworld and stranded on a planet that was supposed to belong to someone else. Veltar's eyes widened as he understood the parallel. Your people are also displaced. 3 years ago, Marcus confirmed. Galactic Council said it was temporary, but we're still here, still waiting for a permanent assignment. Then perhaps, Shiara said softly, displaced peoples should help each other. Councilmember Harrison, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Marcus, what exactly are you proposing? Marcus took a deep breath. I'm proposing we establish an experimental agricultural partnership. The Zephyrian family stays here, on my farm, as agricultural consultants. We study their biotechnology. They learn our mechanical techniques. We develop hybrid farming methods that could benefit both species. And if they're government objects? Commissioner Walsh asked. Their government declared them non-persons, Marcus said firmly. They have no legal standing to object. And if our government objects? Then they're objecting to a potential solution to our food security problems, Marcus replied. We're facing a harsh winter. Traditional crops might not be enough. These sustenance plants could be the difference between survival and starvation. Rodriguez studied the glowing fruits thoughtfully. You'd need to file formal reports, document everything, submit regular progress updates to the council. Of course. And any violations of settlement law by your guests would be your responsibility. Understood. The officials huddled in discussion while both families waited nervously. After several minutes, Commissioner Walsh returned. We're willing to authorize a 6-month trial period, she announced. You'll have full agricultural research clearance, but the Zephyrians must remain on your property. No unsupervised contact with the general population until we can assess the political ramifications. Marcus felt relief wash over him, but Veltar looked uncertain. You would make us prisoners. Not prisoners, Rodriguez clarified. More like diplomatic guests with restricted movement. It's better than deportation to the wasteland. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same field where he'd first met the Zephyrian family. But now, Instead of struggling corn and wheat, the field was filled with a carefully planned hybrid agricultural system that was the envy of human settlements across 3 star systems. Traditional human crops grew alongside Zephyrian sustenance plants in carefully designed companion formations. Marcus's mechanical harvesters had been modified with Zephyrian biotechnology to work more efficiently, while the aliens had learned to program irrigation systems and soil analyzers. The partnership had produced 3 major breakthroughs. First, they'd discovered that sustenance plants could be cultivated to grow different varieties of fruits and vegetables, not just the original sweet fruit. Second, human fertilization techniques could triple the yield of Zephyrian biocrops. Third, the combination of human mechanical efficiency and Zephyrian biological expertise could produce enough food to support 5 times the settlement's current population. Emma and the Zephyrian children had become inseparable, creating the first truly bilingual human-Zephyrian dictionary. Sarah had learned to cook with Zephyrian biospices, creating fusion cuisine that was becoming popular throughout the settlement. Veltar had mastered human mechanical engineering, and Shiara had become the settlement's unofficial advisor on sustainable agriculture. But the real breakthrough had come when the harsh winter arrived early and threatened the entire colony. Traditional crops had failed in the unexpected cold, but the sustenance plants continued to grow and produce food. The hybrid agricultural system had kept the settlement fed when they would have otherwise faced starvation. The Galactic Council had taken notice. Representatives from 12 different species had visited Marcus's farm to study the human-Zephyrian partnership. The diplomatic implications were enormous. Here was proof that different species could work together not just for survival, but for mutual benefit and innovation. Captain Rodriguez, now promoted to colonial administrator, stood beside Marcus as they watched the children play in the fields. "You know," she said, "the Council is considering making this a formal interspecies colony. Equal representation, shared governance, combined technological development." Marcus nodded. "Veltar mentioned that other Zephyrian outcasts have been asking for permission to migrate here. Apparently, our success has given hope to others who don't fit into their rigid social structure. And our own refugees keep requesting transfer assignments here. Who would have thought that being accidentally stranded on the wrong planet would turn out to be the best thing that could have happened to us?" As the twin suns set over the thriving farm, Marcus reflected on how one moment of choosing compassion over fear had changed everything. The human farmer who had thought albino aliens were coming to attack him had instead discovered that the greatest strength of humanity wasn't their technology or their determination. It was their ability to recognize that strangers were often just neighbors they hadn't met yet. Veltar approached, carrying one of the glowing fruits that had become the symbol of their partnership. "Marcus, my friend, the evening harvest is ready. Will you join us for the celebration meal?" Marcus smiled, thinking about how far they'd all come. Wouldn't miss it. The farm that had started as one human family's attempt to build a life in exile had become the foundation for an entirely new kind of civilization, one where being different wasn't a reason for exile, but a reason for celebration. And in the glow of the sustenance plants, under the light of alien stars, 2 refugee families had built something that neither could have achieved alone: a home.